Welcome to the other side. This is a podcast by the 43rd Mission, and it's a place designed where we can bring in guests that have been through something or they know something, they've been successfully through it and out the other side, and we want to learn from them. Today, our first guest is Sean. Sean's a really close friend of mine. He's a good buddy. We worked together my entire career. He started a couple years ahead of me, and he was really one of the first people to take me in under his wing. And I learned a lot from him, but we also became really good friends. And we spent a lot of time at the gym together. Our careers ran together almost the entire time between patrol, detectives, SWAT team. Sean and I have been running and gunning together for a long time. And to make it better, our families are close. And Sean, if I had to explain Sean, one of the first things I'd say is that he's one of the titans in my life. And in our trainings, or if you see my story, you'll know what that means. But in a nutshell, it just means that there are people that are really important to me that I look up to, and people that I'm really proud to be in my life. So when I decided to start this podcast, the first thing I do is went to Sean. There's no way I'm starting this thing without asking Sean to be here first. So he's our first guest. But one of the things you're going to learn about Sean is with a big guy comes a big heart. And recently, Sean made the decision to retire earlier than he was eligible, and seek wellness for himself. So you're going to see Sean talk about his story, how the job affected him, what he learned, maybe some advice for us, and hear him talk about making the decision to go out on top before the job takes too much out of him. So we start off this podcast getting right into it, talking about the old days, and it's just me and him. Let's take a listen.
And then just obviously we've done everything pretty much together all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, like every spot, like I either went first or you went first, and the other one came and we were there and
Yeah.
running through the same stuff, running through the same shit over and over.
Over and over. Yeah.
My stuff seemed to happen a little bit first before yours.
Yeah.
Like I got kicked in the nuts a few times before you got your kick in the nuts.
Every time. Every time. Now, we started working together almost 18 years ago. That was the don't think about it, drink about it era, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a rough atmosphere. Like, you had to prove yourself, you know. You remember being out there and the old guys would be like, "You're nothing to me. You're a recruit. You're nothing until you prove it."
Yeah.
Right?
Told me the only thing I was good for was sit in the back seat, call out where we were going, and maybe he'd throw a cheeseburger to me every once in a while, but I wasn't allowed to do anything else because if I did, I'd get one of his friends hurt and they'd kill me. That was one of my first PTOs.
Yep. I could probably name who that was.
Yep.
I wasn't allowed to go to coffee with anybody on training. It was a rough atmosphere, I think, when we first started, because that was just how it was. You know, like I said, the don't think about it, drink about it. It was, we never asked for help. We never reach out to anyone. We're tough. We can't let them see a weak. You had to prove yourself. Like, they didn't trust you until you bled with them.
Yeah, you had to get in a fight. Like, we had to.
Yep.
I remember multiple times after I came on, finding fights for people because their PTOs wanted them to get into something.
No, that was the deal. Yeah, we'd get to work on PTO and going to go find you a fight. So there was a lot of that. It was a different time. I think that was, you and I are kind of like the last of that generation as they moved out. We came in being taught like that, and how much do you think police work has changed since we started?
Oh, it's changed crazy. Like you said, I've been doing it. I did it for 20 years, and when I first started, like you said, it was all that tough guy, macho, and I was fine with that when I first started because that's what I was. I was 24, trying to build up, get huge, and go do fun things as a cop. Arrest people and drive fast, and also help the community by like doing good things for the community, actually taking people off the street. And that was the good part about the old days. The rough part about the old days was, you definitely didn't talk. You had your own thing, but basically a lot of it was around drinking, hanging out with the same guys, talking about the same stories. There was no outside stuff that happened with somebody other than police guys. I mean, basically, like, your friends, you had a few friends outside, but a lot of the times you were in the mix with those guys and you didn't have anybody else to talk to because nobody else really kind of understood what was going on out there. Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. Like, we had, tons of times I could think of where it was just something bad happened. It was like, you'd be all right,
Yeah. Dust yourself off.
Let's go have a drink. Let's go have a drink. You'd be all right.
Yeah, I remember Quid Street Cafe, what they called it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you knew you were in the crowd when they invited you to Quid Street Cafe. You had a hard fight, hard day, and they would invite you to that after work, which was just basically guys getting together having beers.
Yeah, and I know when I started, the thing was cigars over
Mm.
over off of, over by the Capitol. We would go down
Mm.
underneath one of the parking garages, and we'd all go smoke cigars and just talk about whatever, just to kind of release from the day.
But not talk about what was really going on or anything.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
And you and I've been through a lot together. Like I said, we started our career, or I started my career. You were one of the first people I connected with, and that's what I want to mention is you were different than all the other guys because you were like, yeah, it was rough, but I remember you telling me almost early on, it's like, I don't subscribe to that. Like, you're all right. Let's figure it out. Let's work together. Like you were the first one to kind of take me under your wing, and I remember that, and that's where our friendship started. And then, of course, we forgot to talk about how we spent a lot of time at the gym together.
Yeah, yeah. In
And
the beginning, there was a lot of hazing going on,
yeah,
and I knew it. Like when I first started, I started with Jake, and Jake, and he was let go a couple years into it, and I just remember watching the differences in how they treated him, how they treated me, and how they treated everybody else coming on. And I never was big into the whole hazing thing.
no,
I thought some of it was needed, but then yeah, no, like I felt that making somebody a good cop, you had to connect with them.
yeah. That's good leadership because that's exactly what happened. Then we became really good friends. Our families became friends. Our kids are growing up together. And then we started going into detectives together. We
Yep.
caught a lot of bad guys together. We served on a TAC team together. We went through a lot of stuff
Yeah.
together. And so that's why I wanted to have you here. So thanks for being here. So, but it's just a different time.
Yeah.
Now there's none of that. There's no more hazing. The academy's different. They're being trained different. Emotional intelligence is a huge part of the curriculum, and that was stuff that we wouldn't even talk about back then.
Yeah. Some of it's good. Some of it's good. Some of it's rough. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of my stuff towards the end, because now that I'm officially, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but now that I'm officially retired and done with everything, uh, they started getting to the point where it wasn't safe. That's how I felt. Like
hmm
we were getting people that came in, and we broke away from the hazing and the toughness and the roughness of everything to the point where we were. Now I was going to a call, and I was worried that if I got in a fight, is my partner even going to jump in and help me?
yeah.
And that's unfortunate to say, but uh, it's true.
Well, and I remember you and I talking about that, like when we weren't working together, that um, you felt like you were carrying a lot of that weight, that safety,
Hmm.
and a lot of pressure on you because you were the big guy, you were the experienced guy, so they do whatever they want. But when it comes down to protecting people, if
Yeah,
unless I'm wrong, it felt like when you were trying to explain it to me that you just felt like it was all on you.
yeah. No, when I first started, so I was there was a couple guys that were bigger than me, and definitely a couple that were meaner than me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I was 6'4". I got to 300 pounds. 280 was looking good and feeling good, and um, but they would use me for those moments in those back in the day. They would use me as the guy,
The
you
enforcer.
know, the enforcer. Like I would get called. I remember getting called. I tell the story all the time. Like I was driving downtown, and we had a sergeant that would always go out, and he would talk real big and do his thing on shift, and he would always ask for help, which was fine. But he called me over one day outside of a bar, and he's standing with two guys that were bigger than I was, and he calls me over, and I get out of my car and I walk over to him, and he looks at me and goes, Sean, you know what these guys just said to me? He goes, they said they can kick our ass. What do you think about that? And I'm like,
Why am I
why are
here?
you trying to get me into a fight right now? Like, I'm just trying to have a good day, fella.
Right.
you know? And unfortunately, that's what it was like with even, it was like that with I would say, like the old school days. And then even with the new school days, because it unfortunately ended up where a lot of the new school cops that we brought on had never been in fights before, hadn't
hmm
even, trying to teach them how to be the alpha in an encounter during the entire encounter and not give up um, things that could get them in a bad spot, and ended up with us having to do more things to help protect them
Yeah.
from themselves, which put us in worse spots. Like yeah, there was.
And the stress
Oh
that builds up.
yeah, the stress of knowing that you have to do it every day. Like I did never. I was never on. I was super healthy, always working out, and I drove you on the day that you had your thing. But I mean, blood pressure, right? Like
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
first time having high blood pressure, I was, I don't know, maybe 32 ish. I was working the West Side. I had partners that I wasn't comfortable with. And every night was a fight because there was downtown bar issues.
Yep.
And then I was on the West Side with a bunch of DVs. And every night, legitimately, you knew that you were going to get into some kind of a tussle. I don't want to say fight. Fights, that was one of the things I used to argue about with the guys all the time. They tell me they got in a fight with somebody. And and they arrested him. And I'm like, you didn't get a fight. He was trying to get away from you. There's a difference between a fight of someone trying to hurt you and get away, or someone just trying to get away from you. That's not a fight.
Yeah.
So I legitimately felt like I was going to have to get into a fight every night. And it broke down on me at one point when I had two people I really didn't trust. And that night I ended up getting a migraine and almost
Hmm.
blacking out. And they took me to the hospital while I was in uniform, shot me in the butt with a bunch of stuff that made me go to sleep for a while. And since that day, I've been on blood pressure medication because of just the stress of what that does bring to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, we were getting married, having kids. We were,
Yeah.
we had stuff at home. And I tell people all the time, like, I don't know that I really experienced true fear until I became a dad.
Yep.
It's like, holy cow, I'm married now and I have kids. I was scared. Things just got different with those fights. It just wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah. That was all good and easy when it was by yourself.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when your
100%.
kid says bye to you, you're like,
Yeah.
get to work, and you're like, I don't even care if you breathe wrong.
I will do
I'm
something to
gonna win.
protect myself.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna win, and you're gonna lose. And yeah, no, the kid and the wife thing. If you're not married before you get in, and then you get married, or either way, or especially the kid thing. But as soon as the kids come around,
Yeah.
it is a different world because you're not just fighting for your safety.
Right. Yeah. You actually worry about coming home.
Yep.
And all that just adds a ton of stress. So when you think about your career, just show your overall experience. You kind of talked about the beginning, the end. What story do you want to tell? How do you want to describe some of the stuff that we're doing today for the podcast? Just because the whole idea is to reach out, help other people, tell your story, give you a space to tell your story, whatever you want to say. But also, we'll talk at the end about giving advice. But what do you want to talk about when you think about the podcast?
I think the bigger thing is just getting the information out there for people that want to know stuff, that want to actually look for help, or are thinking, why do I feel like this, or
Yeah.
what's going on, or
Yeah.
I'm an emotional guy, so you'll probably see me cry a couple times and get a little loose here, but like it's important stuff, and being able to give people the help that they need, or encourage them to get the help that they need, or just
Yeah.
chat with people, is huge because it makes a huge difference in how the life can go in the aftermath. Because
Yeah.
I think about it all the time. Like if I wouldn't have retired when I did, I felt like I was on a sinking ship, and it was like, what was gonna what was gonna take me out? And I feel blessed that I don't hit that point when I retire, and then the silence and the not having anything else to do
Yeah.
hits, and then all that stuff comes back up and gets you, right? Like
Yep.
that was the one thing that for me that I wanted to point out when we did all this stuff was kind of also know where you stand, right? Like understand where you are, good, bad, wherever you're at, and look at what you could be missing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind when I think about you is a big guy, and being a big guy comes with a big heart. And I saw you dive yourself into investigations, just trying to be that protector, trying to get that justice for people. And one of the things people don't realize about police work, I think, is that there's not always justice. There's not always the support you need. There's not always the same feelings or values by the people that are, you know, in charge of us. And you've invested yourself. And do you think that? Um, I think it made you a great police officer. I think it made you an outstanding detective. But do you think that also had an effect on you?
Oh, 100%. I think the personality of the person going in makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, people that do the job for the right reason, there's people that do the job just to look good in the uniform.
Yeah.
And I came into it, just my personality with the family and how I was raised was I was going to do the best I could. and I was going to push myself, and I was going to feel your pain, and I was going to try to help you. And yeah, that killed me.
Yeah.
100%.
Especially
100%
the
that killed me.
feeling the pain.
Yeah, but there's no way not. There's no way not in my mind. I don't think there's any way not to do that and still be successful, right?
Yeah.
Like being a detective and seeing how many cases get screwed because of somebody who's heartless, not paying attention, whatever it is, right? There was many of them along the way that I saw that it's embarrassing. And I always told myself like I'm going all in,
Yep.
and that's just how I was because I didn't want to ever regret not doing something for whatever victim it was. But yeah, that 100% killed me because it's me taking on the pain, trying to help and understand the pain so that I can help, take some of it off them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good for the families, but terrible for me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of on the road. On the road, you could kind of wipe it off. You could have that pain for a little bit. It would wipe off, and you didn't have to go see that family again. You didn't have to go talk to that family or see that thing again, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But in detectives, especially with a bigger case, homicide or whatever else, you were constantly in contact with those people, and you were seeing that pain every day and how it got worse and what made it better and all these different things. And I think that part of it was, I didn't expect that part.
Yeah.
Coming in, and I wasn't ready for it. And like you said, there's a lot of political or there's different things that come into play during these times, and some of the people that are you think are there to help you or protect you or to lead you, they don't have any clue either,
Right.
and then they make it worse, right? And that's huge because there's a lot of like the first thing I learned was there's a lot of moral issues that arise on top of your trauma, right? Like I should go do this because this is what's morally right to do, and your lieutenant, your sergeant, your whatever, are saying, no, you can't do that because we don't want to go spend $200.
Right. Or you've got 25 other cases they want you to work on, and
Yeah, and you're
they want
like,
they want the clear ratio, clear the case.
yeah. So there's instances like that where those moral things were by far those were the first ones that got to me before I started realizing how much of the trauma that we had. Um, the moral injury piece was the first one to totally like rub me down to the point where I was just like broken to the point where I'm just saying, I'm going to do what's morally right, even if you fire me.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me in trouble a few times. But
Yeah.
in my mind, I thought to myself, I can't not do what's right.
Yeah.
By my values.
Sure. Yeah. And I remember those coming head to head. There was the kid that you saved, and it was abducted. Remember that?
Yeah.
And
No,
that was one of those moments where you had to do what's right, even though it was going to burn you, and you did what was right. And what was the result?
yeah,
Kid got saved.
the two that stick in my head every time when I think about these moral issues when we talk about stuff is the homicide investigation. I had multiple location phone pings of where this guy was in the aftermath of the murder. And this was a nobody homicide case. And we never found her ultimately. But I was told I was not allowed to go walk those locations to double check to find the body. Uh, I was told that the family could do it, but I was not allowed to do it. And that broke me because I'm like, I'm not going to have some family member walking out there alone and find their mother, hacked up in pieces and then let them try to figure out. I can't even imagine that.
No.
But I can't do it because it just doesn't sit right with our department and they can't pay for it. So that moral injury was the point where, I said, the hell with you guys, I'm doing it. And I did it on my off hours. And it broke me. 100%.
Yeah.
And then same thing. I what's funny though is it came up in the trial at the very end. The prosecutor asked me, "Well, how do you know that she wasn't in any of these other locations?" And I kind of giggled in my head, thinking like, "Oh, you just screwed yourself, buddy," because I walked every single one of those locations physically myself, and I could tell you that she was not there. But it arises on a ton of a ton of times when you're a cop, if you're trying to do the right thing, you run into this, and it's sad. It's sad. It got to the point where I felt like we were good at doing the little things. Like, congratulations, you wrote 20 speeding tickets this month, and you picked up a warrant off the street by some guy that was freaking sleeping on the corner. Congratulations, you're an amazing cop. And then you get a kid that's abducted, and we don't know what an Amber Alert is, and they're just like, oh, she's in Montana. It's okay. She's not gonna die here, you know. And you're like, but it's my call, guys. It's my call. And if she dies, you're not gonna be bothered. But
Right.
guess who's gonna be bothered? Me.
And you're the one that has to explain everything to the family.
Yeah. And it's I don't know. And it's never prepared to that part of it. Like, especially when the worst happens, there's no preparation that we had or we have for that feeling.
Yeah. Yep. One of the questions I had for you that for later on, but I'll ask it now since we're on the topic is, I've been doing some research and study and talking to people, especially professionals, about, where does burnout really come from? And um, one of the things I've been kind of realizing is that, we go through a lot of stuff and it bothers us, but a lot of that we're kind of prepared for, we're kind of trained for, we kind of know going into it, like we're going to see and do some bad stuff. But the way we're treated, the moral injury inside the department versus the stuff we're actually experiencing, which we should be getting help for, to just figure out how to process it. But where do you think for you burnout came from? Was it more the stuff you went through or the aftermath inside the department?
No, I think it started with the moral injury, the aftermath portion, because yeah, we don't get prepared for the bad stuff, right? We barely talk about it in the academy. And then you see it, stuff happens, and then you see something else, and that one doesn't bother you because it doesn't top the worst one.
Mm,
And then you see the next one, and it doesn't top it because, like, I've seen much worse than this,
yeah.
and it keeps rolling off your back, but it sits inside you and you don't realize it. But no, 100% the burnout initially came from doing the right thing morally,
Yeah.
personally, and then getting in trouble or whatever it may be. Um, People not understanding because it's not their case or whatever. There was no there was no backup. There was no, hey, good job. There was no, hey, you were on the right path. You knew what you were doing. Like, I appreciate the hard work. There was none of that. It was always, you messed up. You could have messed up. This could have happened. That could have happened. Now I got to do this because you did that. And there wasn't anything, you know, there wasn't anything successful. There wasn't anything to back us up, to help us out. But then something atrocious would happen, and they would turn around and be like, oh, it happens. And it's like, I'll tell the story because it bothers me still, right? Like, I'll get, let's say, the homicide thing. Like, I could have gotten in trouble for walking all those paths. It would have looked bad, whatever. Um, they didn't want to pay the overtime, whatever. I could have gotten in trouble for it. They could have fired me, most likely. Um, but then you go out and you have a case, and it's a DV, and they just came up with all of these. Oh my goodness, what was the word for it? All the different questions that led up to the fact that there was a higher circumstance that something bad would happen. What
Mm.
was that?
Oh, the mortality. No, is it mortality factors or the?
Something like that, where they just came out with it,
Yeah.
and it's like, these are the things you need to ask, these are the things you need to do,
Mm-hmm.
and blah blah blah. So I'm doing all the right stuff, going down the path, and I'm on light duty at this point, and I'm talking to this lady, and it was legitimately the first time I'd ever said this to somebody, but I was like, he's gonna follow you home
Yeah.
and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And took all my paperwork, passed it along because I'm on light duty, handed it up to the sergeant, like, hey, we need to do these things. We need to get a couple of these things done, so we need to have somebody at her house. We need to help her out when she leaves the place. We need to double check that someone's not going to do this with her. And people not believing you,
Yeah.
people not thinking the worst would happen, right? They're the sergeant. They know best. They know whatever. And they don't trust people's instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked for the stuff to be done. Whether it was done or not, I'm not 100% sure. But I got home, and within an hour, I got a phone call saying that he followed her home and killed her and herself. Killed her and himself, and left a 13-year-old daughter behind, basically.
Yeah. I remember that one.
And it's like, you're sitting at home like,
You did everything you could, and nobody would listen. Yeah, I remember that one. Honestly, that one's tough on me too because of how it affected you. I knew how involved you were, and you were right. And nobody listened. It was so frustrating. And a lot of that started with a different agency, so it seemed like, oh, we'll just pass it off to that agency.
yeah,
It's fine because she lives, in a different place, or it's just maddening.
yeah. So I think the moral injuries of those moments, and I'm giving like specific moments, but like the moral injuries of those moments, and obviously a bunch of other small ones, yeah, adding up to that gets you burned out, I think.
Yeah.
And then not on top of it, just the stupid buddy stuff that happens around the shop. Like I know you're burned out, so I'm just like poke, poke,
Yeah,
poke.
yeah.
Because guess what? I'm burned out too, but this will make me laugh a little bit. Poke, poke, poke.
Yep. I'm gonna bring you down with me. I'm gonna make you feel as bad as me. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we had those moments where it's just like, yeah, then on top of it, you're getting poked at. It's fun poking. It's not anything like, and it's nothing malicious. It's that moment of like, damn, life sucks right now. And I need someone with me.
Yeah, it's kind of a coping mechanism that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of that, and it's a lot of toxicity. And our trainings we talk about, toxic environments. It's not really toxic environments, it's toxic people. It's because they haven't dealt with their stuff. It's because they're looking for an outlet, and that goes clear up to leadership too, right? I mean, you see so many people that will promote to those roles because they're burnt out on police work or they're burnt out on the system, so they think the solution is promotion, and they're still toxic themselves, right? And so it's taken me a long time to recognize or reconcile that, because now they're getting pressured from, like you said, there's budgets, there's community interest, there's politics involved that they're trying to balance. But for you and I, we can't reconcile that because it's not important to us. We're just like, how is that more important in the priority of life right now?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of leadership forgets that. And I don't want to say that we're here dogging on our leadership or leadership. This is we're dogging on an industry.
Oh, 100%.
This is not just our department. I talk to people with the surrounding agencies, all deal with the same stuff. So this isn't, I want to be real clear that we're not trying to dog on any one specific person. This is just the evolution of how people get toxic, get toxic, and they forget that, you and I are still involved with these relationships, these people, that we're still doing the job, and we're morally obligated to them.
Yeah, no, definitely not a hit on any specific agency. My agency, I think it's not that, but if it's happening here, it's happening somewhere else.
Yeah,
there's one of me in every department right now. Like that's what it is. It is what it is. And like you said about the hiring and the promotion part, honestly, that's the only thing to do to survive.
Sometimes, yeah.
Legit, in my mind, that's the only way that I could have survived. Legitimately.
Promoting.
Yep.
Just to get yourself away from it.
It would have taken me away from it. I wouldn't have had to be the first responder. I could have been the third responder, and I could have been the one helping them through the process of what they were going through.
Yeah.
But that process wouldn't have been stuck on me completely.
Yeah.
Right? There would have been others in the process with it. So me, 100%, I think that you hit it completely on the head. I think the people that promote usually are pretty fucked up.
A lot of times.
Yeah. And they don't want to admit it, and they're not all toxic, but they have their moments, and at some point it's going to eat them. But I know in my head, I got to the point where it was, if I don't promote, I'm not going to make it. I won't. It was like, how many more years can I make it without promotion, where I'm going to be the first on the scene, where I'm going to be the one in charge of that worst case scenario, where I'm going to be the one that's giving CPR to that kid, because I'm the first responder out there, and I'm not the third one showing up or fourth one showing up.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was the question for me was, I'm on a sinking ship. Is it going to be me getting in an altercation or getting hurt? Is it me shooting somebody? Is it me dealing with another dead kid? Right. Something's going to take me down because I'm the first responder. And I just don't know because I'm at the point where it's just like no more. But every time that I went into that acting sergeant role, golden,
Yeah.
no problems.
Because you're focused on the cops now
I'm focused on helping the cops, and I'm
instead of,
focused
yeah.
on right, and making sure they get through it safely, rather than you know exactly what's going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I 100% agree. I can't imagine. I want to say there was two, maybe maybe three that made it all the way to 53 before they retired out of the old school guys that were with us.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine their lives right now. And
No.
I don't, unfortunately, don't keep in touch with some of them because it's just life. That's how it goes. But I cannot imagine myself making it to 53, getting my retirement, and then trying to placate myself and enjoy life while dealing with this shit,
Oh yeah.
because it's going to eat them at the end. They don't know it, and people listening, you don't know it yet, but it's in the downtime, the moment of silence that
Mm-hmm.
it gets you.
Yep. No, I think a lot of stuff you and I've been through together and watching you changed how I sergeant. Actually, really started with a lieutenant. I tell the story in our trainings too. I started with a lieutenant who, we're at the time we had just had a baby and we're at this call with I'm investigating the death of a baby, which is really hard, and I have to get in there and look for the petechiae and I have to do all the things I got to do. Didn't even know he entered the room, leans down into my shoulder and just says, "Ooh, bury that one deep in the treasure chest and pull it out when you're 60." And I just remember at that moment thinking, this is when I was a detective. No, why the no? I got to figure something out. But there wasn't anything for us, right? There was a couple of counselors or whatever, but there wasn't anything like there is now. And then watching you go through this stuff, we talk about in our leadership curriculum, I talk about how, what I developed as my leadership mission was A, to care about the people. You got to care about your people, see them suffering, get them what they need. And B, you got to empower them to make the decisions they want to make. You got to trust their instincts,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah,
you want to go down this rabbit hole, I support you.
yeah.
You know, get the answers that you need because otherwise it will haunt you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if that means a little bit of overtime, even if that means other guys in your shift have to cover for you. Um, but I do see exactly what you're talking about. Like a lot of people, um, it's an escape.
Yep.
And the downside for what I did, I think, is I was so motivated and educated to figure out this leadership to have a positive impact on people, the people around me, the organization, that when I did it, that's why I was doing it. For the other people. And the downside for me is I immediately regretted promoting because of everything I gave up. I didn't get to have the fun anymore. I didn't get to be out there. Now I'm focused on these people. So I almost felt like I went too early. And then hearing you, trying to decide too late almost, right? So
Yeah.
it's a hard balance.
And I
Hard
think whether
balance.
you get there or not, whether you get to that promotion level or not, I think also you run into the same problems there when you get to the moral issues, man. I mean, honestly, you've sat through enough different sergeant meetings and admin meetings, and you're sitting there listening to them, and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
like when do we actually have the question about is this morally right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Because of politics or
politics, whatever. I like there's little ones. Like I just remember the first sergeant gig that I was just filling in for, and I remember sitting in a meeting and just saying like, hey, my guys are struggling. I'm trying to get them, motivated, happy, and back to where they were when they first got on the job, or so they're excited about coming to
yeah,
work and we're
yeah,
having fun. And
absolutely.
I remember one of the lieutenants saying, "Oh, you'll stop worrying about that in a little bit,"
Oh wow.
and I'm just like, "What?
Why would I?
What?"
Yeah.
But it's the same. Like you're gonna have, I think, promotion wise or not, it's all the stuff is gonna come up at some point, but you're gonna end up with the same moral injuries up there because you're gonna realize that some of the stuff that we do is like there's so many there's so many dead ends in doing the right thing or reaching where your values and your morals come into play at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some great amazing departments out there that everything's great out there and 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 you could do the right thing all the time, but I imagine
It
with
probably
all
doesn't
the
exist.
government work and
Hmm.
how all the things work behind the scenes, a lot of the moral injuries. I mean, like I said, that was the first thing that caught me, And then once I started pushing through those, then it was the holy crap, what's all the rest of the stuff here?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm glad you're talking about that because, I don't want to talk too much about because I do that in other places, but, I had the 3 wake up calls. The second one, you drove me to the hospital.
Yep.
And the third one coming, it came from moral injury. I just was not prepared really to reconcile how I was treated by other people in the department that has a value system that's on the opposite end of the moral scale as me. And so it's taken me a long time to develop our program to be able to reconcile. They got different values. You got to let that go.
Yep.
Like you got to figure out, I'm sticking to mine. They're sticking to theirs. There's never going to be a resolve. Let me figure out how I can be, successful in what I'm doing and happy and enjoy what I'm doing because that stuff is not in my control.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, but it's super hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think without some coaching. So
yeah, no, 100%. And like on top of all the moral stuff, and just the day-to-day stuff, we are there so much. Even though we have a schedule that gives us a lot of days off, we're there so much. And piling onto that moral injury is oh hey, I know you had a baseball game with your son tonight, but yeah, we got a 5 to 9 because we got a shortage, so
Yeah.
you're gonna work tonight.
You're gonna work. Yep.
You're mandatory, and it's just like I'm giving you everything I got right now, and it's like I'm down, and you can see that I'm down, but
yeah,
you're kicking me more.
Yep.
And you don't see it, and I don't understand why. And then they ask you why you're burnt out.
Yeah.
Why don't you come to work with a smile on your face?
Yeah. Why aren't you as productive? Why aren't you happy? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'm down.
Yeah.
Anything you'd have done differently in your career?
No, honestly, not that I can think of. I got in. I did everything that I wanted to do.
You left it on the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah. I think the hardest part right now, by the way, I'm a little bit 6K, really?
What?
The camera? My tears are going to be like, it's killing me. Get some 4K, some old stuff. I need some blurriness here so I don't look so wussy. No, I think what I regret is not being able to finish.
Yeah.
Right? Because I got out. I think that's the only part where it's like, it bothers me a little bit.
But you left it on the field.
Yeah, no, I left it on the field, but it's like, I think the frustrating part for me is like, when I think about it, is like, I came here to do that profession, and it was this profession. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And this is how I had it pictured. And then it goes down that line, and you get to the end, and you're like, man, I had more. I had more in the tank. I mean, I'm like Tom Brady, right? I'm going to come back a couple more times.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not that I want to come back and do anything specific, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I hate feeling like I got run out of my career. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I knew it was the right time to run.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's smart.
I'm done without some kind of crazy injury that I'm not going to be able to come back from, and I'm done at a point where I can still enjoy the time with my kids and go do something else that's going to keep me, motivated and excited about what we're doing outside this. Because cop work was never my thing. You know that. Like I was never like, I barely told people I was a cop.
Yeah.
I hated being around other cops. I hated seeing other cops dressing the way they dressed and doing the things that they do, because I don't know, it just bothered me. Like, it was never my life.
Wasn't your identity?
No. So leaving that I think that made it easier, since it wasn't my identity. Like, leaving, I think that was easier. I can't imagine if that was my identity and then I left it, because that'd be in a completely different spot.
But you're a really successful guy. We'll get to that here in a little bit of what, how much success you've had outside of police work. But,
yeah.
When I look at it, I look at you and I say, no, he found the right time to get out. You maintained your marriage, you maintained your kids, you've got the stuff you do for the community and the side and the business that you run. So, I don't, for what it's worth, I don't look at you like that. I'm like, yeah, that's an example of exactly what we need to see. because some people don't make that decision, and you've seen it. We worked with them.
Yeah.
They burn themselves down to the ground and not only lose their jobs, lose their marriage, lose their relationships with their kids or loved ones, and they have nothing.
Yeah.
And that scared the crap out of me when I saw some of it. I call them the Titans.
Yeah.
You know, these guys were like amazing, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden they fell. And you're like, how the hell? That
Yeah.
was the toughest dude I've ever met.
I remember having a conversation just a couple months ago, like seeing somebody that had done the same thing, and I was just like, wow, I don't want to look like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel like that. And it was partially because they didn't have something secondary going on in their life. They didn't. It was their identity.
Yeah. And you reached out pretty early on and got help. You feel comfortable talking about that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't even know I was reaching out for help, but yeah, I was. It's not like I was smart and actually knew what I was doing, but yeah, no. I ended up having surgery, and I can't remember how many years I was working, but at some point during our SWAT team days, I started having bad back pain. And I ended up with sciatica and ended up with drop foot. And I was working one day and I just couldn't push off my foot anymore and had to go have surgery. So I went and had a surgery done. It failed. I had to have a second surgery done and the aftermath. So my time off of work was pretty significant, maybe about on and off for a year and a half, maybe a couple months back and a couple months back out, sort of thing. Um, and during that time of healing and my back and being away from everything, my body started acting differently. Like I was already overheating all the time anyway, like before all this stuff happened, but it became much more noticeable of holy crap, it's cold outside and I'm physically overheating in the room and I have to strip down to nothing to go to sleep. And even that nothing is still hot. um, and I didn't know. And I had always woken up in the middle of the night, tight. I didn't have a specific dream. At times there were, but most of the time I would just wake up and I would be in this like tense spot, and I would have to just like I would wake up and like I'd feel it, and breathe through, and I would relax, and I would go back to sleep. But I would wake up in these tense moments all the time, multiple times a night, right? Um, and it became more obvious, and then still was just like, okay, that's part of life. I'll get through it. Not a big deal. Um, Went back to work after the injury, and I was on light duty for like a month or so. And our department had just brought in psychologists to start maybe breaching some of the issues. I'm not sure what their intention was behind it, but they brought in somebody. And I got back to work, and I'm sitting in there doing a bike theft report, and I could not for the life of me type it. It was the easiest thing, and simple bike theft, no suspects, no nothing. And I'm sitting at my desk, and I felt like I'm typing. My mind was above me. Like I could, like that's the best way to describe it. I felt like my mind was 20 feet up in the sky, and I couldn't focus enough to type. And I was like, this is weird. This is not me. I'm usually the guy that's like pumping things out, doing a good job. And so I grabbed a lieutenant that I trusted, and I was like, hey man, I'm not sure what's going on, but this is weird. Like I'm not, my mind is up there and I'm trying to get this done. I might need to, talk to somebody before I get back into this or figure something out. I'm not sure. And so they pushed me along to the psychologist that came into our department and started chatting with her. And it was a mix of like anxiety about coming back to work for being off so long, and different things going on. And then in the aftermath of our basic chats of anxiety and doing all these things to help me get back in the mix of things, we talked about the overheating and waking up during the night and all those things, and talked about a few different scenarios that I had happen. And she basically told me that after a few meetings, like, you have some PTSD issues. And I was like, yeah, no shit.
Yes.
We we all do. What do you want to keep going? Like, that's not going to help me to just sit here and chat with you. Get me back to work.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me these cool ear things. Can't remember what the name of them are, but if she ever comes on here, she's going to tell you guys. You clip them on your ears, and you turn it up, and it messes your equilibrium till you feel drunk, and you talk, and as soon as you're done, you turn them off, and it's like, and everything's good to go. You're focused, and anyway, I'm good off topic, but um,
It's
yeah.
good stuff though.
So she basically, we talked through our stuff, and she initially had asked me about, getting some treatment for the PTSD issues that I was going through. And I wanted to be able to sleep better for sure, because sleep was one thing I knew that I was terrible with, and it was just running me down and running me down and running me down. So I initially was like, no, I don't want to do anything because my department will fire me if I file a claim.
That was
And
always the fear. It still is.
yeah, I was like, my department will fire me if I file a claim, but I do want to be able to sleep better and do these things. Um,
So many people tell me about that. Like, I'm worried that what the department's going to say if I get
yep.
help. Yeah.
And so that how this all happened with me is I went back to my wife that night and I told her, like, yeah, she gave me these things for anxiety and stuff going back to work, and I should be fine, whatever. But I told her, I was like, hey, she told me I got PTSD, and that's why some of the overheating and some of the other things that are happening in my body that I don't know how to take care of sometimes. And I was like, she wanted to treat that and help me with some of the stuff, and I told her no because I was worried about getting fired. And my wife said, basically, fuck them, right? And she said, if that's something that happened to you because of what you're doing and she can help you, then just do it. Just get it done. And that's how my whole thing started was,
Were you worried about what your family was going to think of you too if you got help?
no, no, I wasn't like, it's funny because
They'll think I'm weak or something.
I wasn't worried about that at all. I really, really wasn't. Like, I was confident enough in myself in the department and at the home where it was just like, okay, if I got PTSD, whatever. Like, I know that we all do anyway. And going to work and talking about it and having somebody think I'm weak, like, I don't care.
Good.
I don't care what you think about me. My wife and my kids, I care what they think about me, but they're not going to see me any different. Like, if I explain it to them what's happening, they don't want to see me overheating and having all these issues and not being able to sleep and getting to the point where I'm drinking too many nights or whatever else bad that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I definitely wasn't worried about that. My biggest fear was the department's going to fire me. I'm not going to have a job that's going to be able to allow me to take care of my family.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one of the things that I know pushed me too far was thinking, well, I'm not that bad yet. Like, I'm not there yet. I hear these other people that are a lot worse than me.
yep,
I'll wait till I guess I get there.
yep,
At one point I was like, well, maybe I'll just turn like 53 and I'll, send myself to inpatient to get unscrewed before I retire, because that should work. But do you think, knowing what we know now, and something like, if anything the 43rd mission can do is bring this stuff out to people to realize maybe what you're feeling is normal. It's a natural reaction to what we go through. Could we get help sooner?
yeah. No, I think one of the big things, if people realize it, I think they should just have it right coming out of the academy.
Yeah.
I think it's something they should kind of track, to be honest with you. Understand where you're at, because, I remember specifically after I came back from filing that claim for PTSD, a 2-year cop grabbed me and he was like, I know I'm different at home with my wife and I want to make a difference. Can you help me?
Cool.
And tried to help him. And he had a great pitch to the department, and it unfortunately kind of just never went anywhere. And
I think we tried to do a good job at the beginning with our peer support and with that therapy group that we could bring in to, and I think we were even taking new officers and send them to them before the academy to give them tools. And unfortunately, that doesn't exist anymore, but it was a step. I mean, it's definitely different now, and the recruits that people coming out of the academy are different than what we went through.
Yeah. I just thought it was super cool that this kid realized it.
Yeah. Early,
because I didn't. I was just like, oh, you want to have another drink tonight? Hey, sounds good.
Yeah.
But he realized it early enough, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I'll definitely stand in your corner and go help. And his idea, which I think is still super, super valid for all cops and departments, was he wanted to start a program where when you came in, every year you had a checkup.
Mm-hmm.
You had to basically take this note, go to a psychiatrist, right? A psychologist, walk in, get him to sign the note that you were there, and leave.
Just check
and just turn it in. And it didn't matter if you walked in and they were like, fuck you, not talking, and they signed it off and you went back and you turned it in. But at least it forced the cop to walk through the door, because I'm not going to walk through the door without being forced,
Oh, I got
right?
tricked.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to go through the door.
Yeah.
We're not going to go talk. Like I told you the very first time that I met my my person, right? I sat down and I sat in the office, and we started talking about stuff, and I'm like, just like we do with all stuff, we're checking everything out, and I'm like, what is this? She's not married, obviously. What is this lady who probably lives in her apartment by herself with 30 cats gonna do to help me out? Like, do I really want to sit
What could
here?
she know? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, really? Like, I'm looking around. There's all this weird office, and I'm like, oh my god! Like, I'm telling you, like, you should be telling me something. um, but obviously, after I broke a little bit, honestly, the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
But we're not going to go to the door. We're not going to ask for help. We're not going to do that because we trained not to.
Yeah.
And we think something is going to we're going to be looked down upon, right? Uh, so no, I think department wise, or just having some initiative, having something that would force the cops to go check in. Like I said, even if they literally just walked in and gave the middle finger,
Yeah.
go check in, because at some point when they walk through that door and they're having a bad day,
Yeah.
they'll say something.
Yeah.
Right? Like they'll say something.
They'll get something off their chest. Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it's all we need.
Well, and what I'm trying to do with 43rd Mission and our trainings and stuff too is educate people on what are some of the signs. Not only what can you do about it, what are the action items to start doing something about them. And of course, one of those action items is start getting a coach. Like I call my therapist a coach, and the reason I like that is because with sports,
Oh.
a coach pushes you to be your best, pushes you through it, teaches you how to do it for yourself. Your coach ain't doing nothing for you.
Yep.
Right? They're not out running for you. They're telling you how to run. They're making you better. They're giving you the stuff you got to do to be pushed to be better. And to me, that's what therapy was. It was, or is still, is I'm coaching you, but you got to do the work yourself. And once you do the work, then you get better at doing the work yourself.
Yep.
I felt like I got a little bit tricked, and I think it was brilliant because I came in for some resilience help. Oh, we can help with resilience in my session too. It was like, hey, here's your diagnosis. We got to get started on this, right? But at least it got me in the door.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned this because we break it down into physical, mental, emotional, and then there's some spiritual components too. But the very first thing I always talk about is physical, because everybody wants to know, personal training, or what can I do? How can I be better? And the very first item, because it's kind of my hook, right? Like, physical. Here's let's show you how to feel better. And the very first item is sleep,
Mm-hmm.
right? You start noticing sleep patterns change, and when you don't sleep, your brain doesn't fix itself. It doesn't process, and your body's not healing. And so then you start getting into the physical aspects. For you, a lot of us use super severe low back issues that we all seem to have, right? We're sitting in the car, whatever it is, but I know I carry my stress in my low back,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those muscles tighten up, which creates all sorts of problems. But starting to recognize those signs, the irritation, the not sleeping, the change in the way we are with our families or when we're home, it's a real thing.
Yep.
You remember Dr. Gilmartin?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever read the book?
A long time ago, parts of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, nobody reads it.
Yeah.
The Academy gives us this book, and nobody reads it. So I took a deep dive into that, and I'm like, God dang, he's right.
Yeah.
He is right. That is exactly how it happens with our job, and then coming home, and then how our families experience us.
That was that red and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so funny story. I was married once before I became a cop. And when I became a cop, it didn't work out. But when I was in the academy, they gave me that book, and I was like, "Hey, why don't you read this?" And that was how I got the information.
Oh, perfect. So you got the Cliff's Notes version from
basically.
a different perspective. Yeah. No, but it's real stuff, and I think if there's anything we can do is, tell people how to recognize this stuff sooner, and tell people, like, from the beginning, get a coach, get a mechanic, because there's so many things that we don't know how to do. Nobody ever teaches us how to go up here, which is where we operate, down to here to decompress, right? And we're up here, and then we add caffeine, and we add lack of sleep, and we add the stressors, and before long, our baseline is just almost the same as when we're up at work. And so I think if we can tell people, get out there, get some help, start doing some of the things. There's resilience things that we can do. Take a class from 43rd Mission.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that is the idea. That's why I wanted to have you as our first guest, because not only are we close, we've been through a lot of stuff together, but I see you as someone who has championed back from being real bad,
Yeah.
mentally, physically,
Mhm.
emotionally. You champion back through it. So I don't see you as quitting early. I see you as going out on top. You know.
No, that's how I feel right now. Um, it's like I said, it's still hard. What's different about this is um, when you're able to feel stuff again,
Mm,
right?
feelings. Yeah.
I was emotional, but not. I've always been an emotional guy. All right, I'm always going to be teared up with certain things, but now that you can feel more when you're gone, it's different,
Hmm.
right? Um, I remember the first time that I realized that the treatment was working um, was when we went to go pay our respects to the defense attorney
Larry,
whose kid passed away.
that was a rough night.
And it was odd because it was like to me it was like nothing. It was another day. I had seen it before, I'd done it before.
Hmm.
We knew Larry, we knew the guy, we knew the defense attorney. He was a nice guy, even though we went against him a couple times.
Right.
He was the one on the homicide trial that was on the other side with me. But I respected the guy.
Hmm.
And when we went to go pay our respects to him about his son, I remember driving home and it was like, why am I feeling all this emotion? Like, that's not common.
Yeah.
I'm used to dealing with this and like it doesn't bother me. And I'm driving, I'm like, holy crap, like I can feel stuff again.
Yeah.
Like I don't have this weird thing right here that's stopping me from feeling the emotion that I should.
Yeah.
And it was cool,
Super
you
cool.
know. It sucks because all the emotion came and hit me and I was like, oh, but it was cool to realize like, wow, this stuff is actually working.
Yeah.
It's making me better. It's ultimately healing me to a point where I can deal with these things and enjoy things a different way again.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I learned from other people was that um, emotions are a good thing. We block them out as police officers or first responders. We block them out, and then we get this stress piled up to where we really don't even feel them.
Nope.
Right? I mean, you feel anger. That's what comes out, right? But that's
Yep.
the only one. And so then everybody sees us as angry, which is not necessarily true. But what I started realizing was emotions are tied to memories. And I had a terrible memory, a terrible long-term memory because I had no emotions attached to these things that we were doing as a family, the stuff I was doing out there. Once I started getting the emotions back and actually feeling the emotions, actually being like, oh, that is cool. It's weird, but it's cool. And then guess what? I actually remember those moments now.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Uh,
Rather
I,
than all the other ones sitting in there that you.
yep,
Yep.
yep. No, it's awesome. Well, we're getting towards the end here. I want to talk about how successful you are outside of your job and what you started that with kids. And we both have kind of a passion for sports and working with kids. Talk about what you've done and what you've created.
So outside of work, ever since I've been in police work, I didn't even know that I was, you know, kind of placating myself and giving myself an out. But ever since I got back down here, I was coaching baseball, um, and that was always an outlet for me of being around good families, good players, just nice people, other than the people that I met at work. And that was huge for me. And I didn't realize how huge it was. I'm glad I had it. I'm glad I had something else other than just going to work, working out, and going back to work and working out again and doing that stuff. I had other stuff that was going on in my life that was positive. So um, when my kids were born, I stopped coaching. And then when they started playing a little bit more, I started coaching again. And ultimately, we started a nonprofit baseball academy for boys in the area. Um, and it started with one team and it grew to two teams. And then after 4 years, we're at seven teams. And we opened up a facility in downtown Olympia called the 4040 Athletic Training Facility.
Yeah.
It trains baseball and softball youth in the community. It's open to the public, so it's not a closed facility that we don't get to see everybody, which was one of the big things that I wanted. I wanted to be open to the public so we could, help some of the kids that didn't get some of the training or that were in rec leagues and didn't have some of the coaching that the other kids did have, whether because of location or cost or whatever. We wanted to be able to provide them with that extra ability to get better in sports if they wanted to, right? If they had a passion for baseball. Um, I've been doing that for the last 4 years. This is my fifth year going into it now, and we're continually growing. Um, when I retired and we opened up the place, it's been successful every month that we've had it open, and it keeps me busy. It's weird because my hypervigilance and all that stuff has turned into, I still have it when I'm walking around the street and doing the things, looking at people and
Hmm.
figuring out situations. But some of that hypervigilance at work when I was, having to handle 13 things at a time and complete one task, and has turned into me looking at, like, is the bathroom clean and is the floor clean? And goodness, if the floor isn't clean, people aren't going to come in, and like overwhelming myself with small tasks at the shop, rather than some of the big things that we're handling at work, which is nice. I laugh sometimes about the stress that I have now in comparison to the stress that I had then. Um, but no, the outlet that I had that I didn't know I had in baseball, uh, and coaching helped me through to the point I can't imagine where I would be without having that side piece, that side outlet that I didn't ever really see it that way. But now I realize what it is.
Hmm.
Um, it's been great, and like I said, it's allowed me to be successful in the community and help people and do the same things we were doing when I was doing law enforcement, just in a little bit different way,
Yeah,
right? In our program, um, the 4040 obviously is the for profit building and batting cages and training center, but the nonprofit portion of this with the Brooklyn Bums at Baseball Academy, we're able to do a lot of stuff for the community too. We every year we do things for the kids with just fun events for their kids in the program, but every year in December too we put on a Christmas program where we hire Santa Claus, we hire the Grinch, and we bring them in, and we teach our kids to give back, and we give free photos out to the community, and our kids have to basically serve the community that comes in, give them presents, hand out whatever, candy canes, and that way they can see how blessed they are, um, to be where they're at. So, um, yeah, that's been my passion now that we're done with police work, and we'll see how long it lasts. I think it'll last a fair amount of time, and
keeps
if
growing.
it doesn't, there's life outside of police work. There's things that you can do. There's things that you can, whether you think you can or not. I mean, I'm not a guy that has some kind of huge background that I could just walk into another job, and you know, there's a lot of stuff out there for former cops that you could be just as successful at,
Sure.
and enjoy the rest of your career without, you know, going down a path. If you are one of those guys like I was, where you felt like you're on a sinking ship, you know, there's other stuff out there. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I felt like it when I was trying to make the decisions that I had to make, but it's not the end of the world. There's a lot of things out there for you and a lot of people to support you.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, look at how successful that program been. By the way, he's downplaying that. The Bums has been huge in our community. You've got your own training facility. The Bums keeps expanding. They're expanding into fast pitch now, so they're going to affect some girls fast pitch with the Brooklyn Bells. So the program keeps expanding. But how many families do you have involved or that are affected by that? I would say hundreds,
Yeah, yeah. I would. There's
hundreds, really, with all the different things that you do related to that. And tell them what your motto is for the kids on the Bums team that play baseball. By the way, traveling all over the place,
yeah.
as competitive
So
baseball. But what's your motto?
the culture that we kind of implement there is we stay close to family stuff. So we always tell family school baseball, right? Like if you mess up with the other two things, baseball is a privilege. You're there to play. It's a game. It's a kid's game, and you get to play it as long as you can as an adult. And we try to teach them the importance of doing right by their family, doing right, in school before they get to do the privileges of baseball. And then we really hammer home giving back, um, within our teams, right? So
Yep.
we hammer home to the older kids to help out the young kids that are there, to motivate them and help them when they see them in the community. And we're a real tight knit group, and we don't lose a lot of people, and that's what's been allowing us to grow is the culture that we've built around family, um, keeps us growing each year.
Yeah. Well, and how cool is it that you know you're involved in something that you believe in, something that kind of fills your cup, and it's outside of police work. You found something bigger than you, be involved in outside of police work, and look how it's paid off. And if there's anything I can tell other people, what a great example of why you want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We always say, bigger than me and then bigger than baseball. Like it's not our group is not one person. It's not just me. Like there's a million people that could do the same thing that was doing, but it's bigger than me and bigger than baseball. And yeah, I mean the stuff that we do, Jason will tell you, like I get too emotional. It's too cool to watch.
It's pretty awesome.
And most of the time I can't even talk. I'll just ask somebody else to talk for me. Like I'll hand out my little sheet. And I'll be like, hey, can you say these things for me?
Yeah.
Because you see it in action. You see the goodness in people and what we're giving to the kids, and it's cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to mention?
There's so many different things that we could sit here and talk about
Oh yeah.
the whole time. Different stories that led up to different decisions that were made or whatever throughout the process. But no, I think the bigger thing is know where you're at, right? Figure out where you're at. Talk to people. I know it's hard to talk to family and wives, and no one wants to come home and tell your wife about the bad day, the bad thing that you saw. And on top of that, a lot of them just don't understand it either.
Yeah.
Because some of it's just so big. Some of them are so big that people can't comprehend how hard some of it is. So know where you're at. Realize when you're overflowing, and this may be completely, not like when we think about George Floyd,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't know too much about the cop that was in trouble, but when I first saw it, I thought to myself, like, that dude is probably so messed up mentally,
right,
with PTSD and all the stuff that's going on in his life, that he got to the point where he just didn't see that person as a person anymore.
Right.
And he didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Now he's in prison. Right. Like he couldn't put back the pieces that was a person he was dealing with, rather than, just keep pushing through and not knowing where you're at, not knowing how bad things are for you.
Not caring, not feeling, not having any emotion, not seeing somebody as a
yeah, because that's worst case scenario, right? For us, something bad happens, and but know where you're at. Go get help. Best thing I did was go get help. Best, honestly, I met with our higher ups a while back, and I legitimately told them to their face, like, because I was going to leave, and I said, I'm probably your most sane cop that you have on your force right now, and I'm about to leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you got fixed.
It was by far the best thing I did. Finding that space where you can get back to yourself, is huge. I encourage you to do it. I every day I think about it, it makes me sick thinking about the cops that make it through to their 50s, 60s, whatever it is, and then don't have the time or the ability to enjoy their life in the aftermath because of what is lying in the wait.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's behind that door? You retire, what's behind that door? And then all of a sudden, I can't imagine. Like, I think I was in a bad spot sometimes. I cannot imagine what those guys go through.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see other cops get to that point where it's just, they're done. That's why you have cops that are so, what is it, 5 years of life expectancy afterward?
Right. There's a reason we retire so young, 53.
Yeah.
Because we're not expected to live that long.
Yeah. So, we
can change that.
Yeah, 100%. I encourage you to just go do something, go find some help, go talk to somebody, find an outlet that's other than just drinking and working out and doing all this crap that, whatever. It's just a facade.
Mm-hmm.
Find somebody to talk to, find the right path that helps you, and you can feel a difference and see a difference. And obviously, Jason's going on the right path here with what he's got going, and hopefully it blows up and it helps more people. And just whatever you guys can do to take those classes, find someone to talk to, go do it. Don't hesitate. Like, if you even have a thought right now, just go do it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, brother. Well, we'll go ahead and end it. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for supporting us. Love you. Supporting you in 4040 Brooklyn Bones. See us out there. Um, I just really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate it.
Yep, anytime.
All right.